So anyhow, so we would teach us how to do pee fights, and I can hit somebody, I can hit you from here. You know what I mean? And the only reason that you would not want to have a pee fight with somebody is if they had a cold or something. You'd be going like, I don't want to play, you know. And he would teach us another thing that was really fun is we would get balls of hamburger. And we would just like get them really balled up real tight and throw them as hard as you could. And you'd wait for them to stick, and then you would see who they fell on. And sometimes it would be Dave. You know, and all of a sudden. And so I just want to give you an idea of how filthy our house was. Child Protective Services came out all the time to try to remove us. You would, and I don't know what you thought, Brad, when you first went to my parents' house, but it's not the cleanest place, and it probably looks really a lot better at that point. But at one time, Brad said he was going to use the bathroom at a gas station before I went to my mom's house. And I remember I got so offended. I thought, you're a little arrogant, aren't you? And then I walked into my mom's bathroom, and I thought, I wish I would have gone to the gas station, you know? So our house was just a mess, and everything was kind of chaotic. The only thing I think about my stepdad moving in, and it wasn't my stepdad, it was my mom's boyfriend. They didn't marry for, I think, 30 years. But he was now my dad, and he didn't molest us, so that was good. My real father would take us probably twice a year for visitation, for birthdays and Father's Days. He would molest us and bring us home, so it was really not a visitation. By the time I was, by the time I was 5 or 6, has anybody remembered like when you first started getting depressed? Okay, by the time I was 5 or 6, I remember starting to feel that way. I think what saved me is I had an aunt that was bipolar. And I don't know if anybody has an aunt or somebody that's bipolar in your family, but I think there's a special place in heaven for us. I had an aunt that was bipolar, and one time she came up to me, and she literally came up to me and just grabbed my face, and she said, "You are so beautiful." And I remember I was really tiny. I was like, I don't know, 3. And I just started crying. And I think that she knew by my crying is that somehow somebody was not telling me that enough. And from that point on, she just stayed right by me. And I only saw her once a year. I saw her at Christmas time. But she would make a big deal out of me. If she saw me coming from the car, she would be yelling and telling me jokes. And I've been waiting for you. You get over here right now. And I loved her. And I think that during the last, during my like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, she just kept me at least anticipating seeing her at Christmas. She would tell me this joke, and I got to tell you the joke because it just cracked me up. And she would tell it to me every year. And you know what? At 2, it was the funniest joke I ever heard in my whole life. At 3, it was still pretty cool. 4 was cool. 5, I thought, you know, this is a little lame. So when a 5-year-old thinks that, you know, it might be a little bit lame. So I'm going to tell you the joke. She told it to me every single year. And she would start telling me the joke, and my sisters and brothers would say, "That's not funny." And we would start laughing. "It is funny." "No, it is not funny," and we're not listening. "What?" We would tell the joke louder, and we would act it out. I mean, it was just, we thought it was funny, and so they would just tease us about that. But the joke, everything I say, I want you to say pea soup. So what did you have for breakfast? Pea soup. Say it louder. What did you have for lunch? Pea soup. What did you have for dinner? Pea soup. What did you do all night? Pea soup. I thought, how funny is that? And so for a little kid, that just cracked me up. And I loved her. She was an actress. She lived in Los Angeles and worked, you know, did a little bit of commercials and that kind of stuff. And so she always had some really interesting stories. And one day I came running up to the house. I didn't see her car, so I said to my mom, "Where's Annie K?" Because for some reason she was always there before we got there. And my mom called me over, and she was really angry at me. And she said, "Your Annie K is dead, and I don't want you to say anything because you're going to upset your grandmother." And I'm thinking, what? And I remember not even knowing what dead meant, other than it meant I wouldn't see her. And there was something in me that said, she wouldn't be dead because if she was, she would have taken me with her. And that's the only thing I could have said. She wouldn't have left me here by myself. And I started crying, and it was Christmas Day, so everybody kind of went in the house and said, you know, until you stop crying, you need to stay out here because you're going to upset your grandmother. And so people went in the house. I tried to stop crying, and I could not. It's like I knew that she loved me. and I knew I would not see her again. And it was like every time I tried to pull it together, I would start crying again. And I remember sitting outside for the longest time. And I think this next thing, I think God actually did for me, and I won't know until I get to heaven, but I just was sitting out there. The clouds kind of opened up. I felt like the sun kind of filtered through the clouds. And I heard in my head, not a voice, but I just heard in my head, what did you have for breakfast? And I remember thinking, for some reason, it's going to be okay. Do you know what I mean? I went in the house. I found out that years later that my aunt had committed suicide, and at that time, nobody talked about that. And so I think that that's why the harshness and don't upset your grandmother and all that stuff happened. But later on in that week, I think, I decided that I was going to kill myself. How old was I? Do you remember? 8 years old. And I decided that I was going to jump off my house. I don't know how to kill myself. I didn't know what I was doing, but my house was huge, and it took me forever to climb up. I had to figure out a place that I was going to hit when I jumped off, and it was an asphalt driveway, and I was just going to jump onto the driveway. So it took me, I don't know how long to get up there. It was a one-story house. But I was 8, and so I went over to the edge and jumped off, and before I had climbed up, I had stuck a mattress down there, So I hit this mattress and not even scratched myself. I mean, I didn't even, and to this day, I kind of laugh at how God protects us, even when we don't want protection. Do you know what I mean? I didn't want protection. I wanted to die, but I didn't want it to hurt. You know what I mean? And so,
took a mattress with you.
So I did, I know. So I ended up, weeks after that, I started limping a lot, had some pain, I was having difficulty walking, and they finally took me into Children's Hospital. And at Children's Hospital, they found out that I aggravated a disease that I had from the jump. And the disease is called the Perthes disease. It's where your bones kind of stay like sponge instead of hardening like they're supposed to, and it just aggravated that. And for Children's Hospital, what they do with Perthes disease is they put you, first of all, they were talking about putting me in a full body cast for 6 months. That was not okay with anybody.